The sea that morning was calm enough to lull anyone into a sense of security. The Gulf Stream shimmered beneath the August sun, rolling in long glassy swells that broke only into lazy whitecaps. From a distance, the yacht Solstice cut a gleaming figure across the water, 46 feet of polished fiberglass. Chrome fixtures sparkling, sails stowed as its twin diesels purred against the morning tide. On board were the Westbrooks. Jonathan, 45, a successful Florida contractor with the kind of confidence that comes from money earned through sweat. His wife, Evelyn, 43, elegant but unpretentious, a former marine biologist who had long since given up her career to raise their family, their children Sophie, 16, and Caleb, 12. Two neighbors and friends back in Fort Lauderdale. The Westbrooks were almost enviable, intact, adventurous, wealthy enough to live freely, yet grounded enough to be likable. Their planned voyage was not unusual. Jonathan had charted dozens of trips before Bahamas runs, fishing weekends, offshore island hopping. This trip was meant to be different, though. 2-week sailing loop east through the Bahamas, skirting the edge of the Exumas, then south toward Turks and Caicos before circling back. A family odyssey before Sophie left for college applications and teenage independence threatened to pull her permanently away from home. On August 7, 2010, Solstice departed Fort Lauderdale Marina at 7:45 a.m. Records from the marina office confirmed the departure. Fuel topped off, provisions loaded the night before, standard paperwork filed. Marina staff remembered Evelyn's cheerful wave, Sophie snapping photos with her new Nikon DSLR, Caleb impatiently tugging at the dock lines. Nothing out of the ordinary. For the first 3 days, the Westbrooks checked in regularly. Satellite pings from their onboard Iridium phone placed them moving steadily eastward along their projected course. Jonathan made brief voice calls too. His business partner, on the morning of the 9th, assuring him everything was smooth sailing. Evelyn texted her sister a photograph of Caleb holding up a dolphin fish he'd caught, grinning in oversized sunglasses. Sophie posted one final photo to her social media, sunset smeared pink across the Atlantic horizon, captioned simply, "This is perfect." Then silence. By August 11th, no more pings registered from the satellite phone. No calls, no texts. Not even the yacht's EYES automatic identification system transponder, which every vessel of Solstice's size was legally required to keep active. The last signal had been transmitted roughly 180 nautical miles northeast of Nassau open waters, deep shelf, far from major shipping lanes. At first, the lapse seemed like a technical glitch. Equipment failures were common at sea, faulty satellite phone, a disconnected EYES unit. But when days turned to a week with no word, concern sharpened into alarm. On August 14th, Evelyn's sister filed a missing persons report. That triggered the U.S. Coast Guard to open a search and rescue case. By then, the Solstice had been unaccounted. For nearly 3 days in some of the most unpredictable waters of the Atlantic, the coast Guard launched a massive search operation, HC-2144 Ocean Sentry. Aircraft scanned grid patterns from the Carolinas down to the Turks. Cutters swept channels and potential drift paths. The Bahamian Defense Force joined in, canvassing closer to shorelines. Pilots and captains described the waters as deceptively clear, yet vast enough to erase anything smaller than a tanker within minutes. The first break came on August 19th, when a commercial freighter reported sighting debris roughly 220 miles east of Andros Island. Investigators found fragments of what appeared to be fiberglass paneling, a life ring stenciled faintly with Solstice, and a tattered duffel bag with clothing still inside. The evidence suggested catastrophe, but it was far from conclusive. Jonathan's business partner insisted the yacht had been meticulously maintained, its engines overhauled less than 6 months earlier. Evelyn's sister argued that Jonathan's competence at sea was beyond question. He knew these waters, had contingency plans drilled into his children. But the ocean is merciless. Even a yacht in perfect condition can capsize in the wrong squall, and a family can vanish without trace in minutes. By September, the search was officially suspended. No bodies were recovered. No emergency beacon was ever activated. The Solstice was declared lost with all hands. For most, the story ended. There, a tragedy at sea. One more family claimed by the Atlantic, but for Evelyn's sister, it never sat right. She remembered Evelyn's caution, her insistence that safety gear be checked, life jackets counted, radios tested. She couldn't believe her sister would allow something as simple as a malfunctioning beacon to doom them. Nor could she reconcile the eerie lack of wreckage.
Oh.
A 46-foot yacht doesn't simply disintegrate. Somewhere, she insisted, Solstice still existed. The years passed. The case faded into local lore, mentioned in boating forums and whispered about in marinas. Occasionally, rumors flared an unverified sighting near the Dominican Republic, a supposed SOS call intercepted by a fishing vessel. Each time, investigators found nothing. By 2015, the Westbrooks were little more than framed photographs on mantelpieces, remembered only by those who loved them. Then, almost exactly 10 years later, everything changed. On August 12, 2020, at 3:14 a.m., the Maritime Rescue Coordination Center in Miami received an automated GPS ping from a registered vessel transponder. The system flagged the vessel ID as belonging to Solstice. The coordinates placed it far from its original course deep, within a restricted zone of the Atlantic. It's an area known informally among mariners as the Devil's Corridor. This stretch of ocean, lying just east of the Bermuda Triangle boundary, is officially designated a forbidden waters zone due to unexplained disappearances, extreme magnetic anomalies, and long-classified naval testing ranges. Civilian vessels rarely entered it. Few who did lingered long. The ping was brief, 63 seconds. Then silence. The U.S. Coast Guard initially suspected a spoofed signal, perhaps a hacker rebroadcasting old data. But cross-checks revealed the transmission was genuine. Broadcasting from a physical eyes unit registered specifically to the Solstice, for the first time in a decade. The yacht and perhaps the family had resurfaced. The official response to the Solstice's sudden reappearance was both swift and hushed. At 3:27 a.m., just 13 minutes after the eyes signal vanished, the U.S. Coast Guard relayed an internal alert to the Department of Homeland Security. By 4 a.m., the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency had already confirmed the coordinates, 2944 N, 6422 WA. Patch of ocean falling directly within a naval exclusion zone. The location raised immediate red flags. That section of the Atlantic had long been sealed off for reasons never publicly explained. Mariners who strayed too close often reported sudden instrument failures, violent compass swings, or even hallucinations. To conspiracy circles, it was a hotspot of paranormal lore, lumped in with the Bermuda Triangle. To military insiders, it was Sector Echo, an area used for classified weapons tests during the Cold War, supposedly abandoned, but still marked. Forbidden on international navigation charts. The Coast Guard debated a rapid deployment. Protocol required investigating active transponder signals, particularly from previously lost vessels. But the Navy quickly intervened, citing jurisdictional authority over the coordinates. Within hours, the matter had escalated beyond the normal chain of command. By dawn, a joint task force had been assembled. Coast Guard, Navy, and representatives from the FBI's Maritime Crimes Division. On the surface, the mission was straightforward: located the source of the eye's ping, determine if Solstice was afloat, and retrieve any evidence. Beneath the surface, tension simmered. If the yacht truly was adrift in Sector Echo, its presence posed troubling questions. How had it remained hidden for a decade? And why resurface now? The search vessel chosen was the USCGC Archer, a medium-endurance cutter outfitted with advanced sonar arrays. It departed Miami at 10:15 a.m. on August 12th, carrying a crew of 56, plus a handful of civilian specialists quietly flown in overnight among them. Dr. Rachel Flynn, an oceanographer with prior work in magnetic anomaly studies, and Commander Elias Kearney, a Navy intelligence officer whose clearance level exceeded most of those on board. The crew of the Archer had been briefed only partially. Officially, they were looking for a derelict yacht. Unofficially, whispers circulated that this was no ordinary search and rescue. that the Westbrooks' boat carried secrets buried far deeper than a family tragedy. 2 days into their journey, at 2:46 p.m. on August 14th, the Archer crossed into Sector Echo. Almost immediately, equipment began to falter. The first sign was the radar sweep blips fading in and out erratically. Then the compasses began to drift several degrees at random intervals, forcing helmsmen to steer by dead reckoning and visual horizon. Depth sounders spiked wildly, reporting trenches thousands of feet deep followed by plateaus as shallow as 40 feet. None of it correlated with known charts. Dr. Flynn noted unusual fluctuations in the magnetic field, her instruments registering pulses that came and went in steady intervals like a heartbeat beneath the sea. She urged caution, warning that extended exposure to such anomalies could disorient both machines and men. That night, strange reports filtered through the crew. Several sailors swore they heard voices over the static of their radios, children laughing, someone calling their name. One technician insisted he saw light skimming just beneath the waves, moving too fast to be biological. Commander Kearney dismissed these as fatigue-induced illusions, but privately, his demeanor grew increasingly rigid. On the morning of August 15th, the breakthrough came. At 7:18 a.m., sonar picked up a solid return, approximately 3 nautical miles ahead. The object was stationary, metallic, and roughly the size of a mid-sized yacht.
Nice.
Excitement surged through the crew. Coordinates aligned almost perfectly with the last known ping from Solstice. The Archer approached cautiously. Engines throttled down to a crawl. Mist hung low over the water, an eerie curtain that thickened as they drew closer. Spotters strained. Through binoculars, slowly a shape emerged, a dark silhouette rolling gently with the swells. It was a yacht, white paint streaked with algae. Sails shredded. A collapsed radar mast leaning at an angle. On the stern, letters barely legible beneath a decade of decay. Solstice. The ship was real. The Westbrook family's yacht had returned from its grave. A boarding team was assembled immediately. Lieutenant Harris, leading the squad, radioed updates as they clambered onto the waterlogged deck. The smell of rot hit them, instantly: salt, mildew, something deeper. The cabin was intact, but sealed tight. Harris forced the hatch open, revealing darkness within. Flashlights cut through the gloom. What they found inside would trouble investigators. For years, the interior showed no sign of catastrophic flooding. Cushions, charts, and personal belongings remained in place, though coated in mold. Evelyn's notebooks were stacked neatly on the galley counter. Sophie's camera bag still hung by a strap near the berth. Caleb's baseball cap lay on the navigation desk. It was as if the family had only just stepped out. And then there was the logbook. Jonathan's captain's log sat open on the chart. Table. The last entry was dated August 10th, 2010, 1 day before the family vanished. The handwriting was hurried, jagged compared to earlier entries. Strange lights on horizon last night. Instruments syllabilize. Evelyn uneasy. Children think. It's beautiful. We'll investigate closer before turning back. Coordinates logged. The entry ended abruptly, pen streaking off the page as though dropped mid-sentence. The next discovery was worse. In the forward cabin, Harris's flashlight beam froze on a set of deep scratches etched into the bulkhead. For parallel gouges, uneven, as though carved in desperation by fingernails or a knife. Beside them, faint letters had been scrawled in something dark, long-dried. Analysts would later confirm it was human blood. The word was incomplete, cut off midway. Help! The boarding team withdrew, shaken. The Solstice was not merely a derelict. It was a tomb, a message, and perhaps a warning. As the Archer secured the yacht for tow, Dr. Flynn reviewed the captains. Final coordinates. They pointed deeper into Sector Echo, toward the very heart of forbidden waters. Commander Kearney made a decision, then one not shared with the crew. The Archer would follow the trail straight into the unknown, and somewhere, beneath the waves, something was already watching them. The Solstice was secured to the Archer's stern quarter, tethered like a ghost unwilling to let go. Its deck creaked with every swell, timbers sighing in ways that unsettled even the most hardened sailors. The yacht looked less like a wreck, and more like a patient clinging to life, support its mast splintered, sails ragged, but hull intact, as if it had endured its decade-long disappearance with quiet resilience. For the next 24 hours, technicians cataloged everything. Every chart, every scrap of paper, every personal belonging was carefully logged. Jonathan's logbook remained the crown jewel of evidence, its cryptic final entry already fueling speculation. Investigators photographed the scratches and the half-written plea in the cabin, swabbing samples of the dried stains. DNA testing would later confirm what everyone feared: it was human blood, belonging to Evelyn Westbrook. The news spread quickly through encrypted channels. Though the mission was meant to be confidential, rumors leaked into the maritime community. Within days, forums lit up with wild theories that the family had been kidnapped by pirates, that the yacht had been used in covert operations, that the government itself had hidden the truth for a decade. The more rational voices were drowned out by the sheer strangeness of the facts. Boats simply did not vanish for 10 years and return with fresh transponder signals. But on board the Archer, a grimmer reality was unfolding. The yacht's navigation system, long corroded, yielded fragments of stored data. Among the corrupted logs was one partially recoverable Fila. GPS trail cut short at the exact moment Jonathan's logbook ended. The track led deeper into Sector Echo, stopping abruptly in open water. No return path, no sign of reversal. A point of disappearance. Dr. Rachel Flynn analyzed the data alongside the magnetic anomaly readings she had been recording since entering the zone. The correlation was undeniable. The final coordinates of the solstice lay at the epicenter of a recurring magnetic pulse, every 19 minutes, like clockwork. Her instruments detected a surge of electromagnetic energy emanating from that precise location. "It's like the ocean itself is breathing," she muttered to Commander Kearney as they pored over charts. "Something down there is alive or was built to act as if it is." Kearney said nothing, but his jaw tightened. He had come aboard with classified files the rest of the crew weren't privy to. In those documents were references to Project Abyss, a Cold War-era program rumored to involve deep-sea acoustic weapons testing. Officially, the program had been terminated in the late 1980s. Unofficially, whispers suggested something had been left behind. Something that still pulsed, waiting. The Archer changed course toward those final coordinates. As they closed in, phenomena grew stranger. Compasses spun more violently. Radios dissolved into static, laced with faint voices, intelligible except for the occasional word: return, stay, help. Crew members began reporting vivid dreams, Sophie Westbrook's face appearing in visions, Caleb's laughter echoing in their heads. Rational men woke in cold sweats, clutching rosaries or muttering prayers. By August 17th, 3 days into the pursuit, the Archer reached the point. Sonar revealed something extraordinary. Beneath 1,200 feet of water lay a massive structure too geometric to be natural. Angled walls rose from the seafloor, partially obscured by sediment but unmistakable in shape. It was nearly half a mile across, a submerged plateau, bristling with ridges and corridors. Some surfaces gleamed faintly as though metallic, reflecting. Sonar pings in ways no rock formation should. "An installation," Dr. Flynn whispered, staring at the sonar display. "Something human or something else pretending to be." Kearney ordered a submersible drone deployed. The small ROV descended with its floodlights piercing the black. At 900 feet, visibility worsened. Strange particulate clouded the water, swirling in unnatural patterns. The ROV's camera caught fleeting shapes, schools of fish scattering violently, shadows darting just outside the beam. At 1,100 feet, the feed flickered. Then, for a brief moment, the camera steadied on a flat surface. Etched across it were markings, lines, too precise to be erosion, too symmetrical to be random. Symbols rose of them, carved into the metal like plating. They pulsed faintly with a light of their own, as though the ROV's arrival had awakened. The feed cut out seconds later, panic rippled through the control room. Technicians scrambled to re-establish contact with the drone, but all systems went dark. Then the ship itself groaned, a deep vibration rising through the hull, not from engines or sea, but from below. Instruments spiked, lights flickered. Every compass needle locked north, then spun wildly in unison, and then a sound, low, resonant, not mechanical. Like a whale's call, but deeper, more deliberate, echoing through the steel bones of the Archer. The crew froze, listening as the haunting note rolled on for nearly a full minute before fading into silence. That night, sleep was impossible. The men and women aboard swore they heard voices whispering through the bulkheads. Sophie's name repeated, Caleb crying for help. Harris, the lieutenant who had boarded the Solstice, began raving that he saw Evelyn standing in the passageway, dripping wet, her eyes black as the deep sea. By morning he was gone. His bunk was empty, his boots left behind.
Ass.
A search of the deck revealed only wet footprints leading to the rail, stopping at the edge. The Archer had found the trail of the Westbrooks, but in following it, the crew had awakened something that might never let them leave. Commander Kearney gave a chilling order that morning. One logged only in his private notes. Proceed with full investigation. Casualties acceptable. Mission. Priority overrides all other concerns. The ship turned back toward the submerged structure, and somewhere in the silence of the abyss, Second Eye's ping went out, not from the Solstice, but from another vessel, long thought lost. The Second Eye's ping came in at 2:14 a.m. on August 18th. The bridge of the Archer erupted in alarms as the signal appeared across navigation screens. Another registered vessel broadcasting from the depths of Sector Echo. The ship's name was Halcyon. That detail landed like a thunderclap. The Halcyon was a British research vessel that had vanished in 1998 while conducting deep-sea surveys in almost the exact same region. 22 crew had been declared lost. No debris was ever found. For decades, its disappearance had been filed under maritime mysteries, invoked in cautionary tales about the so-called Devil's Corridor. Now its ghost had spoken, but the signal was wrong. The Eye's data showed the Halcyon broadcasting from a fixed position 1,300 feet beneath the surface. At the same coordinates where the Solstice's logbook had led them, ships do not transmit from the ocean. Dr. Flynn analyzed the ping immediately, expecting a corrupted repeat, but the signal contained a current timestamp, its embedded clock perfectly in sync. Worse, there was an additional data burst, encrypted. Unlike anything standard Eye's transponders were designed to send, someone's using these vessels as beacons, she said grimly, or something is. The crew grew restless. Harris's disappearance the night before had already rattled morale. Now whispers of ghost ships circulated, spreading faster than the officers could suppress them. Men avoided sleeping alone. Superstitious talismans appeared, crosses carved into bulkheads. Salt poured across thresholds. Commander Kearney ignored the unrest. His orders from naval intelligence were clear. Proceed. He summoned a classified briefing in the wardroom, attended only by senior officers and Dr. Flynn. Inside, Kearney finally revealed what the crew had only guessed at Sector Echo, he explained, was not merely a restricted zone. During the 1970s, the U.S. and its allies had conducted joint experiments in the region, testing advanced sonar resonance technologies. The goal had been to weaponize sound long-range disruption of submarines through frequencies that could destabilize hull integrity or disorient crews. The tests had been abruptly halted in 1981 after unanticipated consequences. What consequences? Lieutenant Vega pressed. Kearney hesitated. Uncontrolled feedback. Signals persisting long after tests ended. Equipment behaving as if it were receiving instructions from somewhere else. Disappearances. Like the Halcyon. The official term used was resonant echoes. Sector Echo was named for that phenomenon. The room fell silent. Flynn leaned forward, her voice low. What you're describing is not just resonance, it's memory. The ocean is recording signals, replaying them, maybe even manipulating them. That would explain the voices, the hallucinations. And if something's built on the sea floor, amplifying it. Their words trailed off, but the implication was clear. The structure below was not a natural formation. It was either a remnant of the Cold War experiments or something much older. That the experiments had awakened. Kearney's eyes swept the table. Our orders are to investigate fully. It means physical confirmation. We launched the manned submersible at first light. The decision was met with silence, but no one argued. At dawn, the Archer's hangar bay buzzed with preparation. Manned submersible Orpheus was ready, to spherical titanium vessel designed for dives up to 4,000 feet, capable of carrying 3 occupants. Kearney himself would lead the dive. With Dr. Flynn and a Navy pilot named Harker, the descent began at 7:42 a.m. The Orpheus detached smoothly, floodlights cutting into the blue-black as the tether line unspooled. Above, the Archer's crew, clustered at monitors, watching the live feed stream in grainy clarity. At 300 feet, sunlight vanished. At 800, bioluminescent organisms swirled like drifting constellations. At 1,100, the water thickened with the strange particulate cloud first encountered by the ROV haze that clung to the viewport, drifting like ash dot. Then, at 1,250 feet, the structure emerged. The floodlights swept across a vast expanse of geometric walls rising from the seafloor. The surface shimmered faintly, metallic yet scarred with time. Carbon Zor circuitry ran in endless lines across the plating. Some glowed with an inner light, pulsing in rhythm with the magnetic surges. Dr. Flynn had measured. "It's not geological," she whispered into her headset. "This is constructed." The submersible hovered closer. They passed over what appeared to be an entrance. A massive archway half buried in silt. Wide enough for a destroyer to sail through. Around it, debris littered the seabed, twisted metal. Fragments, corroded equipment. Flynn recognized a shape instantly. A propeller hub, unmistakably British make, the Halcyon. She breathed as the cameras panned. Human remains came into view, bone fragments scattered among the wreckage preserved. Eerily well by the depths, Harker swore under his breath. Kearney pressed forward, eyes fixed on the glowing symbols. Then, without warning, the Orpheus's instruments spiked. Depth gauge flickered. Navigation system reset. A voice crackled through the combs, thin, distorted, but chillingly clear. "Jonathan Westbrook. Solstice. August 10th. It was Evelyn's." Voice. Dr. Flynn's blood ran cold. She had heard Evelyn's recorded voice in home videos provided by the family. The tone was unmistakable, yet this was live, transmitted directly into their headsets from an impossible depth. The submersible shook violently. Lights across the structure flared brighter, pulsing in sync with the tremors. The glowing symbols rearranged themselves, shifting like circuitry rerouting in real time, and then something opened. From the archway yawned a black void, vast and silent. The particulate haze poured toward it like smoke drawn into a vent. Low resonance filled the water so deep it rattled their teeth. "Ascend," now Flynn shouted. Harker pulled the controls, but the submersible resisted. Caught in a current that wasn't water but force magnetic, gravitational, something beyond. "Measure!" Warning alarms shrieked. Hull stress climbed above. On the Archer, the feed went white. For 6 full minutes, the submersible vanished from every instrument. Then, without explanation, the signal returned. The Orpheus was ascending rapidly, instruments stabilizing. It breached the surface. Crew rushed to haul it aboard inside. The 3 occupants sat stunned. Harker trembling, Flynn clutching her recorder, Kearney staring dead ahead with eyes hollow. When medics opened the hatch, a 4th voice whispered. Faintly from inside, it was Sophie Westbrook. The hangar bay went silent when the voice spoke. Not a hallucination, not an echo from corrupted combs. Every crew member standing near the open hatch of the submersible heard it clearly. "Help me." It was unmistakably a teenage girl's voice, raw, strained, trembling as if carried on saltwater lungs. Dr. Flynn froze. She had studied every photograph of the Westbrook family, every scrap of video that still existed. She recognized the timbre at once. Sophie Westbrook, 16. When she vanished, she would be 26 now, but the voice was still 16. Medics scrambled to pull Kearney, Flynn, and Harker out of the Orpheus. Their suits reeked of brine, though none had breached. Flynn clutched the side of the submersible, demanding a recording be pulled from the internal comms. The technicians replayed the last 30 seconds before surfacing. Static roared. Instruments spiked, then came Sophie's voice again, faint but clear. Mom said to stay together. Please. The room chilled. Kearney barked for the file. To be classified immediately, locking the system behind Navy encryption. He ordered the crew silent under penalty of court-martial. But secrets like this never stay contained. Whispers spread within hours. Some swore Sophie's voice could still be heard echoing faintly inside the hull of the Orpheus. As though she had left an imprint, Flynn insisted on debriefing the submersible team separately. Harker was near breakdown, his hand shaking as he described the pull of the current, the void opening like a mouth. He swore he saw figures in the haze, people, pale, drifting just outside the lights. Faces. Some looked like sailors from the Halcyon. Some looked like children. They were waving at me, he stammered. Not for help. Like they wanted me to follow. Kearney cut him off, ordering him relieved of duty. Flynn pressed harder, asking what Kearney himself had seen. The commander's answer was chillingly calm. Patterns, structure, intelligence. This isn't wreckage, Doctor, it's a system. It knows we're here. Flynn couldn't shake the moment Sophie's voice emerged. Is it an echo of the past? A recording replayed by the resonant anomalies? Or, far more unsettling, was Sophie somehow still alive inside whatever lay beneath them? Preserved or trapped in some state neither living nor dead, the next 48 hours fractured the crew. Some demanded they leave Sector Echo immediately, claiming Harris's disappearance and the voices were warnings. Others were drawn deeper, almost entranced. A petty officer was caught trying to steal a dinghy to approach the Solstice at night. When questioned, he muttered that the boy had called him. Caleb Westbrook, by the morning of August 19th, discipline aboard the Archer was unraveling. That was when the sea itself changed. The waters around the cutter grew unnaturally still. Swells flattened. The air grew heavy, electric, as though a storm were poised on the edge of breaking. Instruments registered no wind. And yet the ocean beneath them began to glow. It started faintly luminescent, seeping through the black depths. Then brighter, until the surface shimmered like liquid silver. Crew members gathered at the rails, transfixed. Shapes moved beneath, the glow-angular shadows aligning in patterns that mirrored constellations overhead. Flynn realized with dawning horror the structure below was responding. Her instruments spiked again, electromagnetic surges peaking at levels that threatened to fry the ship's systems. Radios shrieked with overlapping voices. Jonathan, Evelyn, Caleb, Sophie all layered, crying out at once. Turn back. Stay. Help us. It's too late. Duh. Convulsed, as a shockwave rippled upward. Metal screamed. Mauer. Cut out across half the decks. For 5 harrowing minutes, the Archer drifted blind, while the sea around it glowed like a living thing. When emergency lights snapped back on, the glow had vanished. But so had the Solstice. The yacht, tethered only hours earlier, was Gonto line severed cleanly, as if sliced by something sharp. Panic spread. If the Solstice could vanish under guard, what chance did the Archer have? Kearney forced calm, ordering immediate pursuit on sonar. Sure enough, the yacht appeared again adrift 3 nautical miles east, heading deeper into forbidden waters as if drawn by invisible hands. Against protests, Kearney ordered chase. Flynn cornered him privately. This isn't strategy anymore, it's obsession. That structure is controlling the vessels, maybe even us. If we keep following, none of us will come back. Kearney's response was stone. The Westbrooks are the key. Whatever happened to them is still happening. And until I have answers, this ship doesn't turn back. That night, the Archer shadowed the drifting Solstice into the heart of Sector Echo. Lightning licked the horizon, though no storm appeared on radar. Crew huddled restlessly, some whispering prayers. Others staring glass-eyed into the dark dot at 2:06 a.m. Sonar registered something vast rising from below, not the structure this time, something moving. The contact was larger than a destroyer, metallic outlines suggesting hull plating but shifting, as though the sea itself were sculpting and reshaping its form. For a terrifying moment, the crew believed it was a submarine. Then the shape tilted, revealing impossible geometry angles that bent perspective. Surfaces that shimmered between solidity and trenicelle. It rose to within 200 feet of the surface. Before holding position, sonar could no longer define it. The screens displayed only a dense blur, like static rendered in 3 dimensions. Then came a signal. Every speaker aboard the Archer crackled to life. It wasn't language, but a resonance. Layered harmonics that pressed against the skull like an intrusive thought. Men clutched their heads, some screaming, some falling to their knees. Through the resonance, words formed, not heard, but understood. Return them. The Archer's hull shuddered. The sea around them boiled, from the black waters beside. The ship, a hand broke the surface, small, pale, unmistakably human. It was Caleb Westbrook. The hand gripped the rail of the Archer with shocking force. Water cascaded from slender fingers as crew members stumbled backward in disbelief. The boy that pulled himself over the side was drenched, barefoot, and trembling but unmistakably. Caleb Westbrook, frozen in age at 12 years old, exactly as he had been the night the solstice vanished. His eyes were wide and unblinking, irises strangely reflective in the red glow of emergency lights. He staggered to his feet, salt water pooling at his bare toes, and whispered in a voice cracked with exhaustion, "Where's Mom?" The hangar bay descended into chaos. Medics rushed forward, some crew muttering prayers, others retreating in fear. Dr. Flynn pushed through, crouching to meet the boy's gaze. He was real warm skin, pulse erratic beneath her fingers, yet something was wrong. His body temperature was impossibly cold. It's like holding a block of ice wrapped in flesh. Caleb shivered violently but resisted blankets. His first coherent words, spoken through chattering teeth, chilled Flynn to the bone. "They won't let us go." Kearney ordered Caleb quarantined in the medical bay under armed guard. To the commander, the boy was not a victim, but a data point proof the anomaly below could return what it had taken. His calmness unnerved the crew. Some whispered that Caleb was not human anymore, that no one could survive 10 years at sea, and return unaged. Flynn fought to keep access to him. Her recorded interview lasted less than 10 minutes before Caleb shut down entirely, curling against the cot and staring at the wall. But those minutes revealed fragments that gnawed at her. Spoke of the solstice not sinking, but being pulled inside. Of corridors made of light, Sophie screaming, Evelyn praying, Jonathan shouting at shapes that weren't men but still watched them. He insisted there were others there, 2 sailors from ships long vanished, walking but not alive. Repeating words like recordings, "They showed us rooms," he whispered. Rooms full of echoes. Sometimes Mom would walk in, sometimes Dad, but not themselves, like copies. "They said we had to stay until they learned enough," Flynn asked. Who they were. Caleb only pressed his hands over his ears and sobbed. That night, the Archer groaned as another surge rolled through the hull. The glowing pulses from below intensified, now rising every 14 minutes instead of 19. Instruments failed completely during each surge, throwing the cutter blind. The crew began counting them like tolling bells. Each pulse a reminder that time was running out. At 1:22 a.m., Caleb vanished from medical quarantine. Guards swore he had been asleep. Cameras revealed only static for exactly 1 minute, and when feed returned, the cot was empty. Blankets folded neatly, as if never disturbed. Simultaneously, sonar registered the solstice, moving again this time, directly toward the submerged structure. Kearney ordered pursuit, despite Flynn's desperate protests. "We just got proof they can give someone back," he argued. "If the boy can return, so can the rest." But Flynn saw something else in the data. Caleb's reappearance had coincided perfectly with the rising pulses. To her, he was not a rescue, but an experiment proof the structure could replicate or project life, not release it. "They didn't give him back," she warned. "They sent him as bait." The Archer closed within a mile of the drifting solstice. Lightning clawed. Across the sky, though no storm formed on radar, The yacht's mast pointed like a finger toward the abyss. Suddenly, the cutter's engines died. Power drained in a cascading blackout. Emergency generators failed to engage. The ship floated helplessly as the water beneath churned with phosphorescent. Light crew rushed to stations, shouting over the dark. Then, from the black water beside them, another figure emerged. A woman this time, hair plastered across her face. White nightshirt clinging to her body, Evelyn Westbrook. She stood on the waves as if the surface were solid, water lapping only to her ankles. Her eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the phosphorescence. Below, she lifted one trembling hand toward the Archer and spoke not aloud. But inside every mind aboard the cutter, you must not follow. Some sailors collapsed instantly, blood streaming from noses. Others screamed, clawing at their ears. Flynn herself staggered, clutching the railing, her mind filled with images not her own. Endless corridors of metallic walls, voices repeating. Words in hundreds of languages, shapes of light dissecting and rebuilding. Kearney stood rigid, fists clenched, resisting. "Where are the others?" he shouted into the storm. "Where's Jonathan? Where's Sophie?" Evelyn's head tilted slowly, unnaturally like a marionette, still learning. Then she sank silently beneath the waves, vanishing into the glow. By morning, the Archer was crippled, half its systems fried, crew morale shattered, mutiny brewed below decks. Sailors demanded withdrawal, claiming every moment in Sector Echo was poisoning their minds. Kearney refused, clinging to the belief that pressing deeper could recover the entire family. Flynn confronted him in the wardroom, voice hoarse from sleepless hours. "They're not alive the way you think, or Echo's constructs made. From whatever that place records, if we stay, it will take us too." Kearney's reply was ice. "Then we'll become part of history's greatest discovery." That evening, the final breach began. The Solstice stopped moving, anchoring above the glowing structure. The water boiled upward, forming a whirlpool that dragged even the 2,000-ton cutter sideways. Alarms blared as the crew fought to keep position. And then, through the roar, a new signal erupted. Every radio, every speaker, every headset aboard the Archer carried the same phrase. Repeated in overlapping tones, Jonathan Westbrook's voice this time, ragged but commanding. "Bring them back. Bring them all back." The phrase repeated 27 times before the comms fell silent. When sonar refreshed, it no longer showed the structure. Instead, it displayed dozens of contact ships, overlapping, possible ghost images of every vessel lost in the region for the past 50 years. They were rising. The sonar screens bloomed with contacts too many, too dense. Vessels layered atop one another. Outlines flickering, as if the ocean floor itself had become a graveyard rising to the surface.
Oh.
The bridge of the Archer erupted in shouts as technicians called out names from the registry tags auto-pulled by the system. Halcyon.Solstice.Estrella del Mar.USS Delaney, Trident, Explorer. Every ship lost within the Devil's Corridor for decades was suddenly here, ghost echoes climbing from the abyss. Some were merchant freighters. Others were military vessels whose disappearance had been buried in classified archives. The data scrolled endlessly, a litany of maritime graves rewriting themselves into the present. But sonar was lying. The crew knew it. The horizon remained empty, no masts, no holes, no fleets appearing on the swells. And yet the cutter shook as if surrounded. Men on deck swore they could see shapes looming just beneath the surface, massive hulls gliding silently. Some so close they could have reached down to touch the barnacled steel. The air thickened with the metallic temps. Radios screamed with overlapping. Voices, captains calling. Mayday's mothers crying. Children praying. The bridge became a chamber of ghosts. Dr. Flynn staggered through the chaos, clutching her instruments. The magnetic pulses had accelerated again, now every 9 minutes. And each spike was rewriting the laws of the sea around them. She tried to warn Kearney. This was not a rescue, not a reunion of ships, it was a convergence. Lay beneath was collapsing the barrier between what was lost and what remained. "Commander, it's pulling them forward from the echoes," she gasped. "Not to give them back, but to consume us too." It's building something. Kearney ignored her. His eyes were locked on the drifting Solstice, still bobbing serenely ahead, as if immune to the madness. His jaw set. That yacht is the key. We recover it. We recover the Westbrooks. Gave the order no one wanted to hear. Prepare to board. Lieutenant. Vega led the boarding party, 10 men in rigid rafts lowering into the churning sea. The cutter loomed above, floodlights casting cones of light that bent strangely on the water's surface. The boats pitched violently as they neared the Solstice. From the Archer, crew watched in silence. The yacht looked almost peaceful, its hull glistening, its mast still broken but upright. Vega's voice crackled through, comes as his team clambered. Aboard decks clear. Interior entry now. Minutes passed. The voices returned, hushed but urgent, overlapping with the live feed. Evelyn murmuring prayers, Caleb calling for Sophie. Then screams, gunfire. A radio dropped with a hollow clatter. Static swallowed the channel. On deck, crew members begged Kearney to recall the team. He refused, eyes burning with determination or obsession. They've made contact. That means survivors. Then the floodlights revealed movement. Figures emerged from the Solstice's cabin shapes of men and women, dripping, eyes black with reflected phosphorescence. They moved stiffly, jerkily, but with terrifying purpose. Some wore uniforms from decades past, their insignia faded. Others were civilians in tattered clothing. And among them, Sophie Westbrook, hair plastered to her face, her gaze vacant. Boarding party was gone. Done. In their place stood the returned. Panic tore through the Archer. Crew shouted for engines to be restarted, for weapons to be armed. But systems continued to fail, power surges, frying circuits. The cutter was no longer. A vesselet was a specimen pinned beneath a magnifying glass. Sophie raised her head toward the floodlights. Her voice echoed not through the radios, but directly inside every mind aboard. Come below. It's waiting. The air temperature dropped sharply. Frost rimed the rails despite the humid night. Men collapsed, convulsing, blood freezing in their veins. Others rushed to lifeboats, screaming that the Archer was cursed. Flynn fought her way to the bridge. Have to leave now. Solstice isn't a ship anymore, it's a conduit. They're using it to bring themselves up. Kearney's stare was wild. Then we finish it. We destroy the yacht. He ordered the deck guns primed. The first shell thundered across the water, striking the Solstice amidships. The explosion lit the sea in fire yet when the smoke cleared. The yacht remained, untouched. And then the sea answered. A wall of water rose unnaturally, a swell without wind, towering over the cutter. In its crest shimmered the outlines of ships, hundreds of them, stacked and overlapping like reflections in broken glass. And within them, the faces of the lost eyes wide, mouths open, hands outstretched. The wave crashed down. The Archer rolled violently, decks awash. Screams tore across the ship. In the chaos, Flynn caught one last glimpse through the spray, the Solstice sliding forward. Drawn into the gaping black archway beneath the waves, Sophie standing at its bow like a figurehead, arms raised to the storm. When the sea calmed, the yacht was gone. The wave had vanished as though it had never been. The Archer floated, crippled, half its crew dead or missing. And in the sudden stillness, a single transmission broke across every channel, clear and cold. We are learning. You will join. The cutter floated like a wounded animal in the silent aftermath. The storm wall had subsided, the seas gone eerily calm, broken railings dangled into the water, deck plating twisted where the wave had struck. Survivors stumbled across the wreckage. In shock, dozens gone, swept overboard, or vanished into the black dot in the bridge. Emergency lanterns flickered dimly. Dr. Flynn stood drenched, knuckles white around the chart table, her mind replaying the vision of Sophie at the bow of the Solstice. Sophie had not aged. She had looked alive but not human. Commander Kearney staggered in, blood streaming from a gash at his temple. His eyes burned with a fanatic clarity. They tried to erase us, he rasped. They means they fear us, which means we can fight. Back. Flynn turned on him, fury trembling in her voice. Fight back. Half the crew is dead. We're trapped inside a machine that doesn't follow the laws of physics. You think this is war? It's assimilation? They don't want to kill? US, they want to make us part of them. Kearney's reply was chilling. Then we take the fight below before it finishes. At 0400 hours, Kearney announced his plan. Another dive into the abyss. This time, not reconnaissance, but sabotage. The Orpheus submersible would descend again, carrying demolition charges rigged from depth charges and thermite. The objective: breach the metallic structure, collapse the anomaly before it consumed the cutter. The crew erupted in dissent. Some begged to abandon ship to call for extraction before it was too late. But radios still only carried the overlapping chorus of lost voices. They were cut off from the outside world. Flynn tried reason. We don't know if explosives will even harm it. You saw what happened when we shelled the Solstice. This thing doesn't follow our rules. But Kearney was immovable. He declared volunteers only on still. 5 men stepped forward, driven by vengeance or sheer madness. At dawn, the Orpheus descended once more. Its payload of destruction strapped beneath the hull. Inside, Kearney, Flynn, and Ensign Ortega, a quiet sailor who had lost his brother during the wave strike, as the submersible sank. The water thickened with particulate again, swirling like ash. The lights of the structure appeared at 1,100 feet, pulsing brighter than before, as though anticipating their return. Flynn's instrument screamed. The pulses, they're locking onto us. The symbols across the walls shifted, aligning. In concentric patterns, the resonance swelled, rattling their teeth, pressing against their skulls with unbearable weight. Ortega clutched his head, blood streaming from his ears. Through the roar, voices emerged. Evelyn's, Jonathan's, Sophie's, Rachel, don't. It's not ready. Commander, we can show you everything. Dad's still here. Come below. Flynn shouted over the noise. They're not the Westbrooks. They're simulations. Built from echoes. But Kearney's face was pale, transfixed. His hand hovered over the release for the charges. Then, without warning, the black archway yawned open again. The particulate poured inside. Lights flared in patterns that resembled circuitry alive with power, and beyond the archway. Flynn saw movement. Not ships, not wreckage. Rows of chambers, stretching endlessly, each containing a figure suspended in light. Men, women, children, some modern, some dressed in uniforms from decades past. The lost, preserved like specimens. Their eyes opened as the Orpheus's floodlights swept over them. Sophie was among them. So was Jonathan. Her father's lips moved, mouthing words that reverberated directly in Flynn's skull. Join us. Ortega snapped. He lunged for the controls, screaming, It's a prison! Blow it now! He slammed the release. The charges detached, tumbling toward the archway. The structure reacted instantly. The resonance spiked to a deafening pitch. The charges detonated prematurely, a bloom of fire tearing through the water. The shockwave hurled the Orpheus sideways, slamming it into the metallic wall. Consoles exploded, alarms shrieking. Flynn was thrown against the viewport, vision swimming. Through the haze, she saw the impossible, the fireball folding inward. It was consumed by the structure as though energy were being drained, not repelled. The glowing symbols flared brighter. Instead of destroying it, they had fed it. The resonance shifted no. Longer, chaotic, but focused. The voices fell silent, replaced by a single unified tone that pressed into Flynn's mind like a scalpel. We are awake. On the archer above, chaos erupted as the sea lit up brighter than daylight. Survivors screamed that the ocean was burning. Instruments failed permanently, fuses blown, circuits melted. The cutter drifted powerless as the abyss below thundered, like a colossal engine roaring to life, and then the first chamber rose. A massive hexagonal column, glowing from within, broke the surface 200 yards off the bow. Inside, suspended in shimmering light, floated Evelyn Westbrook / closed. Body serene, untouched by age. The crew fell to their knees in horror and awe. Moments later, more columns followed, encircling the crippled cutter in a forest of light. Within each, figures of the lost. Sailors, scientists, children, their faces calm. Their bodies preserved, each lit as though in eternal stasis. The sea had given them back, but not alive. Flynn's last transmission crackled weakly from the Orpheus. Before the feed dissolved into static, it's not holding them. It's copying them. Now it's building more. The forest of glowing chambers loomed around the crippled archer, an impossible cathedral of light rising from the Atlantic. Each column pulsed with a steady rhythm, synchronized like a heartbeat. Inside the translucent walls, faces floated men and women from every decade of maritime disappearance, their eyes closed as though in sleep. The crew was paralyzed. Some dropped to their knees in reverence, whispering that this was resurrection, proof of life beyond death. Others sobbed in terror, convinced they were next. The boundary between miracle and nightmare blurred with every pulse in the bridge. Kearney's face shone with unholy triumph. Do you see? They were never lost. They've been kept, preserved for something greater. Flynn's voice crackled through what little remained of the cum system from deep inside the Orpheus. No, Commander, you're not listening. Aren't them. They're copies, imprints. The real people are gone. What you're looking at is a machine one that's learning to replicate us. Her warning was drowned by a surge of resonance. Every chamber flared brighter. The Archer's decks vibrated, rivets groaning under pressure. Crew clutched their heads as voices cascaded into their minds, a chorus of hundreds, each overlapping, each incomplete. Some were prayers, others pleas for help, others nothing but screams. Then, above it all, single voice cut clear. Jonathan Westbrook, bring my family together, complete the circle. The cutter shuddered. The sea beneath it began to swirl, pulling the vessel inexorably toward the central archway below. Below, in the shattered Orpheus, Flynn fought to stay conscious. Ortega was gone, his body torn apart by shrapnel during the failed detonation. Kearney slumped at the controls, blood slick across his brow, but his eyes burned with obsession even as the submersible sank deeper into the structure's glow. Do you hear him? He rasped. Jonathan's alive. He's calling us. Flynn forced herself upright, vision doubled. Through the cracked viewport, she saw corridors unfolding in the abyss-vast hallways of light stretching beyond sight, lined with more chambers, like organ pipes. Inside each, human forms hovered, pale and silent. Her voice shook. This isn't preservation. It's replication. They're not saving us. They're collecting us. We're data, Commander. They're building an archive. Kearney was lost. His lips moved in rhythm with the resonance, repeating Jonathan's words under his breath. Complete the circle. Complete the circle. On the Archer, mutiny broke. Half the surviving crew demanded they abandon ship, flee into lifeboats before they were pulled under. The others, entranced by the glowing chambers, refused, claiming to see loved ones inside the light. Fistfights erupted. Knives were drawn in the chaos. Petty Officer Garrison climbed the aft rail and hurled himself into the sea, screaming that his wife was waiting for him. He never resurfaced. Minutes later, another sailor swore he saw Garrison's face appear. Inside one of the new rising chambers, eyes closed, body still. Panic tipped into hysteria. Flynn tried one final gambit. Dragging herself to the half-ruined console, she rerouted what power remained to the submersible's emergency beacon. Her plan was desperate. Blast a broadband distress pulse so strong it might reach beyond the anomaly's interference. The outside world, the beacon lit, screaming through the abyss. Instantly, the structure responded. Chambers flared white-hot. The resonance deepened into a note so low it rattled her bones. For a moment she thought the beacon had succeeded, then she realized it hadn't escaped. It had been absorbed. The machine was listening, and now it was transmitting back. On the Archer, every electronic device flickered alive, despite being fried. Hours earlier, screens glowed with static that resolved into faces: Jonathan, Evelyn, Sophie, Caleb each, looking directly at the crew. Their mouths moved in unison, broadcasting words in perfect clarity. "We are not lost. We are the beginning." Men screamed, smashing screens. But the faces bled into every surface, reflections in portholes, patterns in the glow, even shadows cast on bulkheads. Flynn, watching from the abyss, felt the resonance press into her skull like an iron brand. She saw memories, not her own ship sinking, men drowning, children screaming, and then saw them rebuilt, digitized, stored in infinite halls of light, a library of souls, endlessly expanding. The machine had not just awakened, was hungry. The whirlpool around the Archer intensified. Cutter tilted dangerously, pulled toward the archway. Survivors clung to rails as the ship groaned. And in the center of it all, the Solstice hovered calmly, its bow aimed downward. Sophie still standing at its prow like a guide into the abyss. Kearney's last words, whispered through Flynn's headset before the submersible was dragged inside, froze her blood. History will remember us not as lost, but as the first. On the horizon, far outside Sector Echo, a commercial tanker picked up a sudden-eyes ping. For 90 seconds, the system registered the USCGC Archer broadcasting. Coordinates from the heart of forbidden waters, and then silence. The Archer's last moments were not of sinking, but of dissolving. As the whirlpool dragged the cutter toward the archway, steel groaned and rivets tore loose, not as though crushed, but as though the ship itself was being unmade, its atoms rewritten into resonance. Deck plates shimmered, translucent, crewmen's screams echoing longer than their bodies endured, each voice fracturing into static that joined the surrounding chorus. Dr. Rachel Flynn clung to the failing console in the Orpheus, her breath ragged, as she watched the cutter she had boarded only weeks earlier become a blur of light. Men she had spoken with, laughed with, worked beside her raced into echoes, their images already flickering in new chambers rising around the abyss. The Solstice descended first, slipping bow first into the glowing archway as if on rails. Sophie stood tall at its prow, eyes black pools of reflected light, arms spread like a welcoming herald. The rest of the family appeared behind her. Evelyn, Jonathan, Caleb, all four-aligned, waiting. Kearney, bleeding and delirious, pressed his face to the viewport of the submersible, tears streaking down his cheeks. "They're whole. Don't you see, Doctor? We can be whole too." Rachel could barely breathe. "Those aren't people. They're recordings. You'll never come back." But the commander only smiled through bloodied teeth. "Then let history remember me as the first volunteer." He disengaged his harness and reached for the hatch release. Water thundered in. The last Rachel saw of him was his silhouette, arms spread like Sophie's, vanishing into the particulate haze with a look of rapture on his face. The resonance crescendoed. The abyss was no longer black water, but a lattice of corridors stretching infinitely in all directions, every chamber alight, every copy stirring. Rachel felt her own memories leaking, childhood visions, graduate school lectures, the sound of her father's voice stripped from her skull and threaded into the architecture. She fought to anchor herself, biting her tongue until she tasted blood, grounding herself in pain. "You're not taking me," she whispered, though her voice trembled. The machine answered with a clarity she could no longer deny. "We already have." For an instant she saw herself an exact duplicate, already walking those corridors, eyes closed, hands pressed against glowing walls, whispering words in a voice that was hers and not hers. Her last act of defiance was to smash the emergency ballast release. The Orpheus jerked upward, severing connection, rocketing toward the surface with a force that nearly tore it apart. She broke through the waves at dawn. The sea was calm, glassy, as if nothing had ever happened. No chambers, no whirlpool, no Archer, only endless horizon. Rachel clawed her way out of the ruined submersible onto a fragment of hull plating. She drifted under the rising sun, shivering, salt-stung. Alive for 21 hours, she floated until a Panamanian freighter spotted her. By the time they hauled her aboard, she was half-conscious, mumbling fragments that made no sense to her. Rescuers? Echoes? Copies. It's awake. Weeks later, when she recovered enough to face inquiry, the questions began. Where was the Archer? What happened to the Westbrooks? What did she see below? Her testimony was sealed immediately. Naval intelligence branded the incident catastrophic equipment failure. Families of the lost received folded flags and scripted condolences. Sector Echo remained restricted, though its borders were quietly widened by 50 nautical miles. Rachel tried to tell the truth, at least in fragments, to anyone who would listen. But the more she spoke, the more she doubted her own sanity. She dreamed of corridors. She woke with voices whispering in her ears, which some nights she swore she saw Sophie standing in her doorway, hair dripping, eyes black and endless. 3 months later, on a fishing vessel off the coast of Morocco, Nye's signal appeared for 90 seconds. The transponder ID? Solstice. Coordinates. Far from Sector Echo. In waters the Westbrooks had once dreamed of sailing, the Moroccan crew swore they saw. A yacht on the horizon, glowing faintly in dawn light, and on its deck a family of 4 waving. But when they gave chase, the yacht dissolved into mist. Rachel Flynn received the report the next morning. She read it in silence, her hands trembling. She already knew what it meant. The machine wasn't confined anymore. It was learning to travel. Epilogue in 2031. A decade after the Westbrooks were first declared lost, another family vanished while crossing the Caribbean in a small catamaran. Their last transmission was a simple, chilling phrase. Picked up on open channel before the signal cut, "We are not lost. We're the beginning."